One of the first stories I told on this YouTube spiritual warfare channel was about Bill who was planning his suicide. And we put verses on Bible verses on stakes and staked out his property. And that's video number 5 if you want to review the whole thing. But one thing I didn't tell you about Bill at the time was his business was about to go out of business, and he was going to be going bankrupt. And he had employees working for him who had stolen money. They told him they paid the bills, and they hadn't. They'd taken the money. And so he left with a business in trouble and a bunch of bills unpaid. And the employees that he trained and given jobs had started a competitive business against him. And so one of the things that happened when we got to the property and walked up around the property and we were about to stake it out was that I said, Bill, there's one thing you need to know before we start this process together. He said, what is it? I said, all these employees you've got, these former friends who've stolen money and started a company against you, you need to forgive them. And he just hung his head and looked away from me. And I said, look at me in the eyes. Real sternly like that. I didn't even know him at the time, but he looked up at me and I said, if you don't forgive them, it's like slitting your own wrist and expecting the other guy to bleed to death. See, that's never going to happen. You may bleed to death, but they won't. And he looked at me real seriously and said, you're right. I'll work on that. And I said, okay, we're ready to start now. You see, unforgiveness gets in the way of your relationship with God. In fact, Matthew 5 says that if you're at the altar about to offer a gift to the Lord and you remember someone has something against you, leave the gift, go and reconcile with your brother, then come offer the gift. You know what that's teaching? It's teaching that God won't accept your worship. He doesn't want your worship if you're unwilling to reconcile with your brother. Now, I know people in every church I've been to who won't do that. I've even known preachers who would not reconcile. And you know what? That's a dangerous position to be in when God doesn't want your worship until you are willing to reconcile. That indicates a problem with your relationship with God. So remember, if you want forgiveness, you got to forgive, even if they hadn't asked for it. I can't make other people do the right thing. I can only make me do the right thing. But don't let unforgiveness become bitterness in the heart, because bitterness will eat you up from the inside out, and you won't even be the same person anymore. I knew a lady who became bitter because of something that happened to her as a young lady, and she had 2 sons, and as they grew up, the sons would argue about who had to take care of mom for Thanksgiving or Christmas, because she always brought up the things she was bitter about. She never would let it go. So her own family didn't even want to be around her much. Don't let bitterness eat you up. Forgive. And remember, keep praying. Love you.